surgery after 2006 and suffered from serious side effects such as infection, chronic pain, organ damage, mesh shrinkage, or mesh migration, you could be eligible for financial compensation. Call the law offices of Wright & Schulte right now at the number on your screen. Ethicon, a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson, has withdrawn its PhysioMesh flexible composite mesh from the market. Call the law offices of Wright & Schulte immediately at the number on your screen or visit meshjustice.com now.
We all know that movement is like medicine, but getting the movement you need to feel better can be a challenge. Now you can keep fit while you sit with QB, the world's leading compact seated elliptical. QB gives you active sitting, letting you burn calories and keep moving in an easy and low-impact way, all while you work, read, or watch TV. QB was named a top 10 gift by Time Magazine and has been featured all over the world. It's whisper quiet while it works your abs and core, hip flexors, glutes, quads, hamstrings, and calves.
QB is a lifesaver for me.
Here's your answer to your problem.
I feel young again.
Join the hundreds of thousands of people moving more with QB. Call to find out how to get your QB with free shipping and a 30-day completely risk-free trial. You'll also get this QB workout mat free. Now keep fit while you sit with QB.
To order, call 800-289-5820. That's 800-289-5820. Call now.
Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Well, we are there. The Derek Chauvin case is now in the hands of the jury after a full day of closing arguments as the former Minneapolis police officer facing murder and manslaughter charges over the death of George Floyd.
The motto of the Minneapolis Police Department is to protect with courage and to serve with compassion. But George Floyd was not a threat to anyone. He wasn't trying to hurt anyone. He wasn't trying to do anything to anyone. Facing George Floyd that day, that did not require 1 ounce of courage, and none was shown on that day.
The prosecuting attorney went on to explain the special challenges of cases involving police officers.
The medical examiner ruled the death a homicide. Death at the hands of another. What the defendant did to George Floyd killed him. It was ruled a homicide. The defendant is charged with murder. He's charged with murder and he's charged with manslaughter. The defendant at the time was a police officer. Okay? It may be hard for any of you to imagine a police officer doing something like this. Remember, in jury selection, and we talked about bias and we talked about setting biases and preconceived notions behind. Well, imagining a police officer committing a crime might be the most difficult thing you have to set aside, because that's just not the way we think of police officers. We trust the police. We trust the police to help us. We believe the police are going to respond to our call for help. We believe they're going to listen to us. And this is strong. This runs deep. I'd say it's difficult to set this aside. I want you to consider that even after, with the bystanders, after they saw what they saw, after they saw this shocking display of abuse of police power and a man murdered in front of them, Genevieve Hansen, she called the police. Donald Williams, he saw this. You heard him. He testified. He called the police. A 9-year-old. Judea. What did she suggest? We need to call the police on the police. That's our expectation. Even after seeing this, even after witnessing this, our expectation is that the police are going to help.
And the prosecutor also made this plea to the jury. He said, just use your eyes.
But for the defendant's actions, pushing him down, would George Floyd have died that day? Was it drugs? He'd just miraculously die of a drug overdose in that time? Maybe it was the tailpipe. Maybe it was his enlarged heart. Maybe not. Use your common sense. use your common sense. Believe your eyes. What you saw, you saw.
Then the defense got its chance, and Chauvin's attorney started by explaining the basics to the jury.
These two standards, the presumption of innocence and proof beyond a reasonable doubt, work in concert with each other. You start with the proposition that Mr. Chauvin is innocent of these charges. The state has to advance substantial evidence to convince you that the only doubts that are remaining are unreasonable doubts.
Nelson also spent a lot of time talking about the cause of death, and that is a big part of the case for both sides.
There's no evidence of hypoxic changes to the brain. There's no evidence of any brain injury consistent with an asphyxia death. He found a paraganglioma, and he said it was an incidental finding. He said his heart was enlarged. Mr. Floyd's heart was enlarged, right? Dr. Baker, Dr. Thomas, Dr. Rich, and Dr. Fowler all agreed. He found narrowing of the right coronary artery, 90% narrowing. He found 75% narrowing of the left anterior descending artery. He's the person who did he sent out the toxicology samples. Fentanyl level at 11 nanograms per milliliter. Methamphetamine at 0.19 per millimeter. All of these findings that are ultimately relied upon by all of these other experts were done by Dr. Baker. He determined that the manner of death was a homicide, right? Homicide, homicide, homicide. But read the definition again of the medical definition of homicide. It is to be emphasized that the classification of homicide for the purposes of the death certificate is a neutral term and neither indicates nor implies criminal intent, which remains a determination of within the province of the legal processes. Right? The fact that he found this a homicide is a medical term.
Nelson listed a bunch of doctors, but he failed to name prosecution witnesses who clearly said that asphyxia was the cause of death, not drugs, not a heart condition, or anything else. Now, one of those witnesses was world-renowned pulmonologist Dr. Martin Tobin.
The main forces that are going to lead to the shallow breath are going to be that he's turned prone on the street, that he has the handcuffs in place combined with the street, and then that he has a knee on his neck, and then that he has a knee on his back and on his side. All of these four forces are ultimately going to result in the low tidal volume, which gives you the shallow breaths that we saw here. And so the air will not be able to reach those air sacs we just saw in the video where the oxygen is exchanged and the carbon dioxide is removed.
Many have argued that that testimony from that prosecution witness, in addition to eyewitness accounts, was some of the most powerful and impactful testimony that were heard throughout the trial. So after the defense finished up with their closing remarks, another prosecutor got a chance to give a rebuttal, and he did just that.
What you have gotten here is a number of what I'd call stories that once you analyze them, and you once you analyze them and against the facts and the evidence that you have heard, you'll see what I mean. Take, for example, the notion that Mr. Floyd dying of cardiopulmonary arrest, dying from low oxygen, was just coincidental. He just happened to die at the same time in the same place of factors completely unrelated to what Mr. Chauvin was doing with his subdual, restraint, and neck compression. That's a story, ladies and gentlemen, and defies common sense.
All right. So those were the moments from today, and as mentioned before, it's now in the hands of 12 men and women as the jury deliberates. When we come back, we're going to get the perspective of somebody who has worn many hats here, including being a former Chicago police officer, then a prosecutor, now an attorney who's defended hundreds of cops. He'll join us with his take on the facts of this case and the arguments made by both the prosecution and defense.
Shake your legs, shake your abs, shake your butt, shake up your entire body to a slim, firm, and sexy new you with PowerFit Elite, the breakthrough multi-directional vibration platform that helps engage all your muscles from the moment you step on it. PowerFit uses multi-directional vibration to create muscle confusion and rapidly contract and relax your muscles to help you get fit and stay fit.
It's intense. You really feel your whole body working.
You could be watching TV, but you do feel the workout.
It works you out where you don't feel like you're working out. It's actually a lot of fun.
Each traditional exercise that you do on PowerFit Elite can help sculpt, transform, and redefine your body from head to toe. The secret is the multi-directional vibration technology that causes muscle confusion and forces them to contract and counter-challenge you. Your muscles work hard so you can stabilize and maintain your balance. There are 3 standing positions: walking, jogging, and then running. Plus, there are 3 different program levels for workouts to choose from, so you can really customize your workout. PowerFit Elite can help improve your energy, burn calories, tone your body, define your abs, work your arms, strengthen your legs, boost your buttocks, and so much more. And for an even more intense workout, add resistance bands for bicep curls, forward lateral raises, and crisscross pulls. It's time to join the new fitness revolution that's shaking up the world. Call or go online now and you can try PowerFit Elite in your home for 30 days for only $14.95. But wait, order right now and we'll upgrade you to the deluxe set that includes the complete workout guide, the power bands, and the handy remote control. That's an over $80 value free. Try PowerFit Elite in your home for 30 days. And if it's not the best workout system you've used, just return it for a refund of your trial price. But hold everything, we'll also add our healthy eating plan to help you achieve your best possible results free. Try PowerFit Elite in your home for 30 days for only $14.95 and experience the power of extreme vibration. Order.
Attention timeshare owners. This is an urgent consumer alert from the Timeshare Exit Hotline, a national company specializing in helping consumers legally get out of their expensive timeshare contracts. We're offering you a way to legally get rid of your timeshare. So if you're fed up with the maintenance fees that keep on coming and want to learn if you can terminate your timeshare legally and permanently, call today. Even if you've tried before and were unsuccessful in getting rid of your timeshare, call today and see if we can help. We offer a complete 100% unconditional client satisfaction guarantee. Make this completely free call and learn how we can help you legally put an end to your timeshare nightmare once and for all. You have nothing to lose, so call right now to qualify and receive a free consultation. You can terminate your timeshare legally and permanently, but you've got to call now. Call the number on your screen today. It's a free call.
The defendant is on trial not for being a police officer. It's not the state versus the police. He's not on trial for who he was. He's on trial for what he did. That is what he did. That is what he did on that day. 9 minutes and 29 seconds. That is what he did.
That part of the closing arguments from the prosecution in the Derek Chauvin trial. At the top of the program, we showed you other powerful moments from both sides today. Now I'm going to bring in someone with the perfect resume to analyze what we've both seen and heard. Daniel Herbert, former Chicago police officer, one-time Cook County prosecutor, now criminal defense attorney who has represented hundreds of police officers over the years, and he's joined us before over the course of this trial. He's kind enough to give us a few minutes tonight. Daniel, again, from the layperson here in the closing arguments, not shocking, the arguments or that were restated or repositioned to the jury, but there seemed to be some Hail Marys thrown in from the defense counsel, including things I'd never heard brought up at trial at all, where he said it basically was the EMT's fault, possibly because they didn't administer Narcan or some of these things that I didn't hear come up. Is that a little dangerous when you're laying out to a jury something you never argued of your presentation? All of a sudden now you're bringing it up in closing?
It really is. You know, the defense counsel, you want to maintain that level of credibility with the jurors. And what the jurors are going to do is they're going to look back to what you promised them at the beginning of the trial. And if you're bringing up things that you never mentioned at the beginning of the trial and they weren't referenced during the trial, I think that has a potential to at least cause some dissatisfaction with the jurors. But at the end of the day, the defense case is much more of a Hail Mary than the state's case. So that's probably why they're going that route.
There was also, and again, maybe I'm going to the literal language, but the argument that the defense counsel was laying out was that to find his client guilty, Officer Chauvin, he stated his actions were the only cause of Floyd's death. If you don't find that to be the case, then you got to let my client walk. When in fact, as I understand Minnesota law, Daniel, it's that if his use of force, Chauvin's, was a substantial causal factor, that's enough of a standard. That's an important distinction with a difference, isn't it?
It really is. And, I was listening to the arguments. I'm, of course, trying to do some work myself. But it's normal for both sides to show the jurors, here's the jury instructions that have already been read to you, and this is what you're going to get when you go back to start your deliberations. And I did not see him reference that jury instruction, which there clearly is one. And like you said, Richard, it spells out that it may not be the only cause, but it has to be a substantial factor towards the death. So it's really important that the attorneys hit on those key element points. And I'm hoping he had done it at some other point during his closing, but I didn't hear it.
And obviously, it's going to be important when the judge charges the jury and the instructions as to that. But as I mentioned in the intro, Daniel, you've been on both sides of this. Help me out strategically when you've got multiple charges facing either someone you're prosecuting or more recent years defending. Are you picking the one that you're most worried about and making that the focus of the close, and maybe reading the room here and saying, listen, I'm going to have a hard time getting Chauvin off of manslaughter here, but maybe best case scenario, he's not convicted of murder 2 and 3. And from the prosecution side, you say, listen, this case went so well. I never thought I was going to get murder 2, but might as well give it a shot now and really close hard on that. Give me the strategy involved on both the prosecution and the defense when you got 3 charges, what you're trying to convince the jury of.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And from the prosecutor's perspective, clearly they recognize that there couldn't be what we call splitting the baby here. The jurors might not all agree on second degree, but they can reasonably agree on a third degree or even perhaps a manslaughter. So the prosecutor's goal is they want to argue that second degree as strenuously as possible, show how all the elements meet that second degree, and then touch on third degree and manslaughter, but focus on those, let them know that they proved their case with the highest charge. And if they want to kind of bargain it down in the juror room, then I assure you the prosecutors would still probably be satisfied with the third degree here. With the defense, they definitely want to hammer the points that the state failed to prove the elements of the case. That's their biggest bargaining point here, is the burden of proof. So they want to show that the state didn't prove the elements of these cases or these charges, and then they certainly want to focus on some specific charges. Not only can it not be second degree, but that's preposterous. But even the third degree, even the manslaughter, that's preposterous because of these points. The defense has to focus on it in kind of the reverse order than the prosecutors do.
And then we just deal with reality in that these jurors have not been sequestered. They don't live in a hermetically sealed bubble. They're seeing, whether they're supposed to or not, they know about boarded up shops. They know about what happened 10 miles outside of Minneapolis with the Daunte Wright shooting. How much of that has to be a concern if you're the defense right now to say, if my client walks, the jury's got to have on their minds that there's going to be riots, or my God, this is not a one-off. There's a climate that's going on right now, and people are going to be looking at this case as basically a litmus test as to where we are with policing in America. How much of that has to be part of the equation, especially if you might go to the prosecution and say, okay, what kind of deal can my client get?
Yeah, I doubt that there is any plea bargain discussions at this point. These are types of cases that there generally are not plea discussions because the state's offer would be essentially, yeah, take a plea on second-degree murder and we'll give you, half of what the maximum is. So generally, these cases, there is no fruitful plea bargaining discussions. But Richard, I agree with you, and some people might call us cynical, but I believe that the jurors do know what is happening. Perhaps not in as much detail that you or I may, but they certainly know what's going on. And as far as the impact that it has, it is huge, the impact that it has on essentially the defense in this case. It is very, very powerful, persuasive, and overwhelming for a juror to come back and make that tough decision here. And let's be honest, the easy decision here is guilty. The tough decision here is not guilty for a number of reasons. But knowing that the city is going to go up, knowing that they have to go back to their city at some point, and knowing that their identity is going to be revealed, it's simply just too much pressure and a burden to be placed on a juror, in my opinion, to render a fair verdict.
Finally, as I mentioned before, you wore a uniform, and you've known every side of the law here. To that end, we're both maybe we call us realists or cynics, whatever they want, but does this have a chance? Because I've been struck by how many, former police chiefs that I've had on the show, whatever, not one of them sticking up for Chauvin. Does this have a chance to have some tangible, overdue conversations about reform, or is this just going to have a chilling impact on law enforcement, that this might go the other way, where all of a sudden people aren't going to respond to calls in certain places because they don't need it in their lives? What are the stakes here in terms of policing?
Yeah, this case, I've always considered this case a bit of an aberration out of a lot of the use of force cases, because there usually were pretty good arguments on both sides as to why the force was appropriate, why it wasn't. As you mentioned, in this case, it was almost universal that the force here was not appropriate. And, and that's why they certainly focused on that causation issue in this case. In a lot of ways, this case really was a setback to law enforcement and proponents of law enforcement. So I think that this case may not have the chilling effect on police officers that other cases do. And if I can just give you a very recent example, the city of Chicago, we had that tragic situation where the young boy was shot by a police officer. That's a situation, if this officer were to be charged, that would be a case where the chilling effect it would have on police officers would be felt nationwide. And that would really be impactful, I think.
And I agree with you. And we're talking about the Toledo case. Dana Herbert, I appreciate the time as always, and I'm sure we're going to talk again when we get a verdict out of this. But till then, be well.
Okay, you as well. Thank you.
We come back, everyone. The subject of violence, specifically gun violence in America, has reached epidemic proportions. Frankly, we've been there for a while. It's taking on a huge toll on our children, even when they survive a shooting. After the break, the author of a fascinating new book that gets into just how devastating it is for kids after they witness gun violence with their own two eyes.
Clean up your lawn and garden the smart way with a DR Chipper Shredder. Drop lighter materials into the shredder and the DR will pulverize it into a fine mulch you can use to enrich your soil. Reduce leaves, garden cuttings, sticks and twigs, even big branches, to a fraction of their original volume. The chipper cuts branches up to 5 inches thick into attractive wood chips that are great for landscaping. A DR Chipper Shredder is a complete yard and garden tool that turns your trash into treasure and leaves your property looking great. There's a full line of DR Chippers and Chipper Shredders, including towable and 3-point hitch models.
Go online to drchipper.com to request your free product catalog. All DR Chipper models are on sale and free shipping is in effect. Plus, with our easy financing plan, you can get your DR now and make low monthly payments. Hurry, this offer won't last, so go online today. That's drchipper.com.
Help. When you fall and can't get help, you will lie on the floor for hours or days in constant, terrible anguish, which often results in a tragic outcome. But with Life Alert, one touch of a button can get you help fast.
Don't worry, help is on the way.
With any of Life Alert's 3 emergency systems, help can be summoned immediately, whether at home,
I've fallen and I can't get up.
in the bathroom,
I've fallen in the shower.
or on the go.
Help! I'm in the park and I can't get up.
And batteries never need charging. Life Alert saves a life every 11 minutes.
For a free Life Alert brochure, call 1-800-215-6582. That's 1-800-215-6582. Call now. 1-800-215-6582.
After an auto accident, insurance companies will try to outsmart you and pay as little as possible. At Vocate Legal, our attorneys know exactly how big insurance thinks and how to outsmart them. That's all we do, day in and day out. Call us today or visit vocate.com for a free consultation. We'll help you connect to a qualified attorney in under 10 minutes. Get a free consultation and we'll start working for you right away. Better yet, you don't pay unless you win your case. Our accomplished attorneys have the experience and knowledge to handle your case strategically and will fight to get your medical expenses paid, your car repaired, and the maximum compensation. Make the right move and partner with one of our Vocate legal attorneys at no upfront cost to you. Call us today or visit vocate.com for a free consultation.
Vocate Legal, fight smarter.
This has to end. It's a national embarrassment. It is a national embarrassment what's going on. And it's not only these mass shootings that are occurring. Every single day, there's a mass shooting in the United States if you count all those who were killed out on the streets of our cities and our rural areas. It's a national embarrassment and must come to an end.
Hopefully we'll all agree it's a national embarrassment, but who believes among us that there is a will to really at this point bring this to an end? That was President Biden, of course, the day after the latest mass shooting in America, 8 people killed within a matter of a few minutes at a FedEx facility in Indianapolis late Thursday night. Now we are learning more about the shooting as well as the shooter. The 19-year-old gunman killed himself on the scene, and now we know he legally purchased the rifles that he used that day. But if Indiana had had stricter gun laws, or the ones that are on the books were actually more closely followed, this tragedy could have possibly been averted. I'm referring specifically to red flag laws, which are in place in more than a dozen states, including New York and California. But their conditions, they vary widely. In California, family members, they can directly petition to have firearms seized from someone in their family if they pose a danger to themselves or others. But in Indiana, law enforcement alone has the authority, and a judge has to get involved as well. And in the case of the Indianapolis shooter, we know the police took a brand new shotgun from the teenager last year after his mother called to tell them that he wanted to use it on himself. But apparently police didn't take it any further. Then, just 4 months after his gun was seized, he bought a rifle. Then 2 months after that, he bought another. Those were the guns that he used last week. Now, the gun violence epidemic, it is causing another crisis in this country. Countless children who survived the shootings either at home or at school or in public, only to suffer PTSD and other emotional problems in the aftermath. And my next guest, he wrote a new book focusing on that. It is called Children Under Fire: An American Crisis. Author John Woodrow Cox, he joins us now. Thanks for the time.
Hey, thank you for having me.
You know, I thought about it when I was going through your book. Traditionally, we all, almost unfortunately follow into this rote routine. We talk about the body count after a mass shooting. We consider who the shooter is, the weapons they use. Then we focus on the empty and often pointless rhetoric from the electeds, some infuriating or some just, negligible, if non-existent of impact. What prompted you to look at the people who weren't in the body count but were nonetheless victims of the shooting?
Well, my feeling was that I had done reporting on this in 2017 and very quickly realized for myself that the scope of this crisis was so much bigger than I had ever imagined, and even somebody who was following it pretty closely. And I wanted to deliver that to readers. So, I did focus on kids who were largely not physically harmed by this epidemic because they represent, frankly, the much, much, much larger pool of victims in this country, especially as that relates to kids. We tend to focus so narrowly on the people who get shot, whether it's in these mass shootings or in school shootings, or just, in the everyday sort of community gun violence. But the truth is that this is a crisis that affects not hundreds, not thousands of kids, but millions of children every year.
And I want with you to put a human face as you did in your book on this, but there's no debate, is there, John, that the evidence is empirical, that there is a huge emotional scar on these children, and we'll talk about two in particular in a minute, but there's no more debate with the amount of evidence, and sadly, with all the cases to examine, we know the trauma that's left behind.
Yeah, absolutely. When there's study after study after study that illustrates this. One that I find particularly compelling was a study out of Chicago that looked at when a homicide happens in a neighborhood. The children who live in that neighborhood, they didn't have to know the person, they didn't have to see it, they didn't have to hear it. They just had to live in that neighborhood. And in the week afterward, they did worse on their test scores. The vast majority of those homicides, overwhelming majority, are from gun violence. So, those kids are invisible when we think about the trauma of gun violence. These are kids who are totally removed from that act, and yet it's affecting their ability to do well in school. And then when you zoom that camera in a little bit to kids who maybe witness a shooting, who've lost a parent to a shooting, who've been on a campus when a shooting occurred, none of whom were shot, the trauma that those kids can endure can last for years. And I know that because I've talked to many of those children who are still years and years later dealing with debilitating PTSD.
Let's talk about two of those children, both 7 years old, one a boy, one a girl, one from a poor rural white community, one from an inner city poor black community. The boy lost his dad, the girl lost a very close friend. Let's talk about what you saw firsthand to them, their family. Start off, I guess, with Ava, if you will. Talk about what you saw and the scars that you wrote about. And you said at one point, if I got it right, John, that you've covered this for a long time. You have never been as shook as what you saw when she was having one of those episodes after the shooting.
Yeah, that's true. I wrote about that in the book. And Ava Olson is her name. She attended a small elementary school in South Carolina called Townville Elementary. One day in 2016, in the fall of 2016, a 14-year-old pulls up on this playground and gets out of his truck and opened fires on a group of first graders who had just come outside for recess. And among them was Ava. She had a cupcake in her hand and, she drops the cupcake and runs. But the boy she really loved, her best friend named Jacob Hall, he was killed. And he was the only one who died because the shooter's gun jammed in 12 seconds. That was the entirety of the shooting. That's why most of us have never heard of the school shooting at Townville Elementary, because that's how we calculate these things now. We how many kids died. In the 5 years since then, Ava has suffered from just debilitating PTSD. She had to leave school. She was diagnosed with PTSD. She's disassociates sometimes and has these really violent episodes. I've witnessed a couple, and one of which I describe in the book that lasted about half an hour. And, this isn't who she was at all. This is a thoughtful, well-read, girl who made A's and B's and is just described by everybody as this incredibly sweet kid. But that 12 seconds derailed the rest of her life. I mean, she's going to fight for the rest of her life to achieve some sort of sense of normalcy just because of that day and the after effects of it.
You go, I guess, close to our nation's capital with Tashawn, and he lost his dad. His dad was taken from when he was only 7 years old, also at the end of a gun.
Right. So he was in second grade when I met him. And, Tyshawn, unlike Ava, he was really familiar with gun violence. This had been a big part of his life since he could remember being alive. He had once been on a playground when somebody started shooting and somebody, tackled him to the ground. Another time he was playing video games in his dad's bedroom and somebody started shooting outside and he, dove behind the bed. When I met Tyshawn, there was a bullet hole in his dad's front door. When I met him, he was in second grade. By then he knew 4 people himself who had been shot to death personally. These weren't just people he'd heard of, but he actually knew them. So, all of this had been circling his life before it finally ended his dad's life. He was shot 5 times in the middle of the day. And, for Tyshawn, he immediately dealt with anger and depression. There were times when he didn't want to be alive anymore so he could see his dad in heaven. He, though, is not unique in his community. A lot of kids, the only way we really get introduced to these kids, most of us, is through news articles that talk about the dead parent and they say father of 3 or mother of 2. But those 3s and 2s, represent enormous pain, years of pain, and sometimes kids never recover from that stuff. What makes the book, I think, pretty unique is that these 2 kids, Ava and Tyshawn, end up becoming best friends, really, because they end up bonding over this, uniquely American tragedy, and that is gun violence. And that friendship is still exists today. They write each other letters and talk on FaceTime, but it just, it should never have happened because what caused it was something that is so preventable.
John, in prepping for your book, I read Professor Hemingway, who is a professor of health policy at Harvard, but he's also the co-director of the Harvard Injury Control Research Center. And it was interesting. This is a guy surrounding it. He can have data, and as does his actual center at the tip of his fingers. But he found your book to be both moving but extremely infuriating because of the international collection of students that come into his class. None of them can understand from the countries they come from when there's such a human health crisis, how the adults permit it. And he found it infuriating because he really liked those kids. Like it's impossible to walk away not feeling for him after reading your book. It's amazing. If you just listen to the kids, they seem to know better than the adults. They don't want to grow up in a world where they have to be worried about who's got a gun and who doesn't, and what they have to take matters in their own hands, possibly to even protect themselves. It's amazing the disconnect between what kids know and what adults are unwilling to do.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's intentional too, right? I mean, these kids just see, hey, this thing is doing incredible harm to me and my friends and my community and my parents. Why can't we do something about it? And, there's an unwillingness, I think, among many lawmakers to even acknowledge that reality. Is they have to deny that millions of children are affected, because if they acknowledged it, they would really be obligated to do something about it. But, the truth is that money still plays a huge part in why we can't really get anything done on this, because the gun lobby, the NRA, they don't want new gun laws passed. They don't want any kind of restrictions on the sale of firearms. And, if we research it, there might be things we find that they don't, want us to find, to say, hey, this is how things can get better. I do think that there is a real disconnect between what most of America wants, what regular people want, including gun owners, and what people on Capitol Hill are willing to vote for. The overwhelming majority of Americans, including gun owners, want things like background checks, universal background checks, to get passed. They want laws that say, hey, you have to lock up your kid, your gun from your kid. Your kid can't get access to your gun. Many of these laws, red flag laws, a lot of them have significant support among gun owners. So America is not nearly as split on this issue as Capitol Hill is. And that's because, there are senators on Capitol Hill who simply are more afraid of the gun lobby and the NRA turning on them than they are of almost anything else.
I know everyone has heard enough of numbers for guns, but one kid shot every hour. We've lost 30,000 children over the last decade to guns. And as you learn from John's book, the number is much, much bigger than that when you look at all the, unfortunate collateral damage that's attached to it. John Woodrow Cox, again, the book Children Under Fire: An American Crisis. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you for having me. This was a great conversation.
You as well. All right, everyone, we'll be right back.
I didn't know some Medicare Advantage plans may pay for dental visits. Did you?
I didn't know some Medicare Advantage plans may pay for transportation to my doctor. Did you?
I didn't know some Medicare Advantage plans may pay to have my prescriptions delivered directly to my home. Did you?
These and more are important benefits some Medicare Advantage plans may give you. So if you're eligible for Medicare, call us right now, because you may be eligible to enroll in a plan with amazing additional benefits. Some Medicare Advantage plans may pay for services like these: dental visits, vision coverage, hearing coverage, home delivery of drugs, even gym memberships. Some plans may include no copays for many services and 0 deductibles. Don't wait to find out if you're eligible to enroll in a plan that may include some of these wonderful benefits you deserve. Call us right now. The call is free, the information is free, and there's no obligation. Make this free call now to learn if you're eligible to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan that may include additional benefits you want.
This is important news for people who have taken Zantac or its generic ranitidine and then suffered from cancer. Zantac and generic ranitidine have been linked to cancers. Zantac and ranitidine contain NDMA, a known cancer-causing agent. If you or a loved one took Zantac or generic ranitidine and were then diagnosed with bladder cancer, kidney cancer, or any of these cancers, call Davis & Crump right now to see if you're eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Operators are standing by.
Remember when taking a hot bath was the best part of your day? And for some, it can be hard and even not safe just getting in. Older bathtubs can be as high as 20 inches. Let's face the facts. As we get older, our knees and backs start to hurt us. Getting in and out of an old bathtub can be difficult and even dangerous. Jacuzzi Bath Remodel, a name you know and trust, has the perfect solution for you. We call it the tub to shower conversion. We'll remove your old bathtub and the need to step over a dangerously high threshold, replacing it with the safety and luxury of a low-profile walk-in shower. Advanced materials mean no more mold or mildew from an old bathroom, and all this in about a day. As a special bonus to you, you'll get a special extra safety feature for free. So please call now.
And welcome back. In this segment, we're going to go by the numbers to check out the latest polling on some key issues and also key figures. Joining me, our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman. And let's start off, Andrew, in Albany and Governor Andrew Cuomo on the hot seat for allegations of sexual harassment and COVID deaths at nursing homes. There are state and federal investigations going on simultaneously, and an impeachment inquiry has begun. And the question I'd have is, do the numbers suggest what is the public's appetite about Cuomo finishing the first term, let alone possibly running again?
Well, Rich, so far what we're seeing with the numbers is that New Yorkers want Cuomo to finish the job, but they do not want him to get another term. New York voters clearly, by a 14-point spread, do not think Cuomo should resign. That's the number on the left-hand side. They say this despite the numbers in the middle. By a 2-to-1 margin, New Yorkers do think that Cuomo committed sexual harassment. And voters on the right-hand side, you see, want someone else over Cuomo in 2022 by a 24-point margin. Even when it comes to just Democrats, re-electing Cuomo Cuomo's only +3, which is an indication the Democrats are ready to move on. Why are they willing, though, to wait to dump Cuomo? They generally like the job he's been doing, even though his approval rating is in negative territory. They love the job that he's done with COVID. That's the big saving grace from the number in the center. Most importantly, though, is the number on the right, I think. They still think he's capable of doing the job, at least for now, and they think that by about a 14-point spread.
You know, and I think if I'm looking at those numbers, I'm doing cartwheels given everything that he's looking at. But Andrew,
if you're
Cuomo, that final number to the right, that's against air. All of a sudden, you put a candidate next to him, he looks better, unless there's some New Yorker I don't know about that's universally beloved in New York. All of a sudden, you put him against, we remember some of the debates that he had in primaries, right? Nobody exactly making him quake in his boots. So I think across the board, sure, concerns if he has any intention of running for another term. But once you put it up on an opponent, I guarantee you that number gets closer.
Oh, I think if Cuomo runs and winds up as the Democratic nominee in 2022, he will have better numbers against any Republican just because the state does not naturally or inherently want to elect a Republican given the breakdown of the state. The bigger worry for Cuomo is the primary. If he winds up running, those numbers, that he's +3 among Democrats for re-election and those other numbers, he's kind of dead meat in a Democratic primary if you find anybody with any capabilities to run against him in a Democratic primary.
And also, of course, what happens coming out of those probes. All right, Cuomo on the hot seat, but another big blue state governor could face voters even sooner, and it's not attached to a scandal per se. California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom is almost certain to face a recall election this fall. His opponents filed in excess of signatures for a recall. They're now just waiting for them to be verified. Newsom criticized for his COVID handling and his own behavior during lockdown, as well as other issues. And question is, should he be worried?
Not yet, Rich, but that could change fairly easily. Here are the latest numbers as we check the polling. Newsom winning the recall right now with 56% of voters saying he should remain in office. Only 40% support a recall. But the number to watch is the first one. If less than 50% vote to keep Newsom in office, he'll be recalled and voters will elect a new governor on the same ballot. And Rich, I think the biggest benefit for Newsom right now, there's no big name Republican who's lining up to go against him right now. It's not like the last time there was a recall when Arnold Schwarzenegger was lying in wait.
And no Democrats are taking a chance to cross him right now either as well.
Yeah, if you come at the king and you miss, that's a problem.
That is a problem. All right, next though, we get to whether or not we should see changes to the Supreme Court. Obviously, it's an issue because some Democrats want to expand the court to 13 justices, packing the court. You've heard it. Biden administration just okayed a commission to study the idea of that as it relates to not just Supreme Court, but all federal courts, including obviously our highest court in the land. So what does the polling say? What kind of appetite would be to really change the way we think of a third branch?
Most surprising numbers of the day, Rich. Americans support the changes to the court, and there's actually room to win the argument over expanding the court. Reuters Ipsos, 2/3 of Americans on the top left okay with term limits for justices. Expanding the court's in the middle. More people oppose it than support it, but we're talking about a 4-point spread with lots of Americans still undecided. The big number is in the number on the right. Voter confidence in the court's decisions are eroding. To my mind, Rich, that could be a compelling argument to either alter or expand the court. Say the courts aren't working. This isn't about packing the courts. This is about making the courts better and making them work faster.
I still think it's a dangerous one for Democrats to go down. We also don't know how it ends.
It's right, but it can be sold. That's what the poll shows us.
Finally, Andrew, the man approaching 100 days in the White House, Joe Biden, he got his first big bill through Congress, the stimulus. He's trying to muscle through infrastructure. But of course, how the nation battles COVID and how close to normal we can be, and when we come on the other side of this thing, will probably go a long way to determining if his presidency is deemed successful or not. And in terms of the early polling, early returns so far so good?
Some of the strongest presidential numbers we've seen in a while, Rich. Biden's at 54% when you get into his approval numbers. That's better than anything that Donald Trump saw. He's also at +13, 13% more people approve than disapprove. Biden's also getting a big boost from the number on the right-hand side. Right direction, wrong track question. Yeah, only 46% of the nation have it heading in the right direction, and more people have it on the wrong track. But that's the highest total for that question since Monmouth began doing these polling in 2013, Rich, which just shows you since we get out of there, out of the Obama administration. And then for vaccines, which is going to be big for Biden, 51% say they've already gotten the vaccine, and a bunch of others say they want to. The real concern, though, is 43% of Republicans say they're likely to never get a COVID vaccine, and that could slow the vaccination across the country. That could slow reopenings and return to normal.
You know, we always hear the standard line, Andrew, you know, once the campaign's over, whoever wins, once they take office, they own it. I'm not so sure that's the case with COVID. You know, I think, if not universally, certainly overwhelmingly, the public believes that the last president did not do a good job with COVID. We saw that when he was president, let alone all the things that happened at the end of the campaign and then since. I think that if we get to a point, coming back to the normalcy question, where there's going to be requirements to show that you've been vaccinated to get on, whether it be some forms of transportation or go to a game or go to whatever else, and people choose not to be vaccinated, they're not going to blame the president for that. They're going to blame the people that aren't taking the vaccine that are the results for the empty seats. I think Biden has a runway for this thing as long as he doesn't screw something up. I'm talking only on COVID.
I think that's right. When it comes to COVID response, people will give him the benefit of the doubt because the response from the Trump administration was so bad. But I think it's also interesting that Americans seem to be in a more positive place now than really any point they've been since the Great Recession of 2008. They feel like tomorrow is going to be a better day in larger numbers. And so I think that's going to keep people thinking positively, even if there are stumbles or let's say people can't access stuff because they haven't been vaccinated down the road. No, I don't think people are going to blame Biden. People are giving Biden credit for putting the United States in a more optimistic place than it's been at least in the past 15 years.
It's funny, the market started another record earlier in the day, and you're used to seeing presidents tweeting out about that. He's not even the current president taking a bow. Would you agree?
Apparently doesn't need to. He's getting credit for even when he's not seeking.
And a president shouldn't take credit or blame when it goes south. But finally, Andrew, you think immigration's his greatest Achilles heel at this point, or is it something else?
I think if the border swells and continues to be a visual problem for him, something that appears in the news, yeah, that could be a problem. But we also know that that's cyclical and seasonal, and so we're about to hit an ebb in that. So, you know, I think immigration as a policy issue is not going to be a problem for him. It's just if the scenes at the border continue to be problematic.
Andrew, great job. Thank you. When we come back, everyone, we're going to get out of Washington. You're welcome. And talking about getting out, we're talking way out here. An amazing thing just happened on Mars. NASA just accomplished something